on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Everybody is coming. I'm super excited. And now I can bring on our surprise, amazing guest. I have just sent him a little invitation on Instagram. It is none other than David Kessler. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm glad to be with you.
Okay, hold on. We got to, David, what David has to do is, David, you've got to mute the volume on your computer or on Instagram, whichever one. You got to pick one.
I think I did it.
Did he do it?
I think so.
We got it? I hear me echoing on his. Do you? Hold on, everybody. Thanks for, let me see. Maybe that's me. Are we good? So I think we're going to need to kill Instagram, don't you? Or are we good? Let's try it one more time. We're trying to work out the audio issues, everybody.
My audio's off.
Okay. That's good. All right, I think we're good. I still hear the echoing. And I don't know if that's mine or if it's yours. So hold on a second. It's funny because the title is, Are You Feeling Powerless? And I'm powerless over technology. Okay, hold on one second. We're having our producer jump off FaceTime. Let's see if that helps. That does not help. Okay, hang tight, David. I think what we should do is kill Instagram. Let's do that because, and here's what I'm going to ask all of you on Instagram to do while we sort all this stuff out. Well, hold on. Let me see if I can do something here.
What if you mute your phone?
Let's try that. Hold up, everybody. And thank you for being patient, everyone. Do I know how to mute my phone? Let's see that. All right. Did that work?
I think it did.
Now you're echoing. So I guess you're going to have to mute your phone and we're going to talk through the computer.
My phone? I think I am muted. This is like, it's all
right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to fix this once and for all. Everybody on Instagram, go to YouTube or go to Facebook or go to Twitter or go to LinkedIn because we are broadcasting, simulcasting on 5 platforms. And Instagram does not play well. And so as much as I hate to say this, you need to watch this conversation because David Kessler is the world's leading expert, in my opinion, about grief. And that's what we're feeling right now. So get over to YouTube. I will see you guys over there. Okay. And now, sorry, everybody. Okay, now let me get this up. All right. Are you there?
Turn your Instagram off. There you go. Okay, good. It's off.
It was Instagram. We tried it, Mandy. I don't know why it's working, but we're going to have to figure out something else for Instagram. Maybe we do double broadcast. Maybe you and I will just jump on Instagram after this, David, and do it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great. So the reason why I wanted David Kessler to be on the broadcast today is because he is the world's foremost expert on grief. And I met David because he has been a frequent guest on my daytime syndicated talk show, The Mel Robbins Show. And let me just take a second and thank you for hanging tight through all of the technical difficulties. We were trying desperately to stream on all the platforms. And if you're new to this broadcast, this is Stay Connected with Mel Robbins. And I do this broadcast every single weekday at 9 a.m. in LA, at noon in the East Coast time, 4 p.m. UK, 9:30 in India, and 3 o'clock in the morning in Australia as a way for us to stay connected, stay grounded, stay sane during this unprecedented moment of uncertainty and craziness. And I wanted to talk to David. You popped into my mind, David, because this weekend, I felt something that I had not felt so far during this pandemic. I started to feel these micro moments of despair. And the first one hit because I pulled up to the grocery store and I was outside of Trader Joe's and I saw a long line of people standing outside the store and they were 6 feet apart. And I started to feel so sad that this was the new normal, that something that I've done 1,000 times and never thought twice about, walking into a grocery store, our access is now being rationed out of a commitment to safety. I pulled up to the Charles River where I walk my dog, and the park was closed due to COVID-19. I heard on the news that the lockdown is now headed to the end of April. And then on Sunday, something else happened, and I saw that the time was 2:13. And normally, if it were 2:13 in the afternoon, David, and I saw that it was 2:13 and I had nothing else planned for the rest of the day, I would be ecstatic. But instead, I felt this sense of doom, David, because I thought, how the hell am I going to fill another 7 hours before I can go to bed? And I wanted you to come on because you wrote the book, Finding Meaning, the Sixth Stage of Grief. And you are the founder of grief.com, which has literally nearly 5 million visits a year. And I want to ask you this question. What is this feeling of general discomfort and these small moments of despair? What is it that we're feeling?
You've been naming symptoms of grief. You are feeling grief. You are recognizing you have lost the normal world. You've lost chatting in line with someone at the grocery store. You've lost having things to do all day, going out to dinner at night. We have had 1 million unnamed losses that are occurring every day in our world now.
Wow, you're absolutely right. So that feeling of powerlessness that comes along with grieving the way life used to be and how the world is changing, what can we do about it?
Well, and not only is the world changing, we've had a sudden death in a strange way.
How
There
so?
was a world we lived in 2 weeks ago that suddenly has been taken from us forever. And we psychically, spiritually, emotionally, in our soul feel that. And naming it is the first thing you can do.
Why is
Naming
naming this grief, David? Why is naming this feeling of being powerless and the fact that our entire world has changed in the last 2 weeks? Why is naming this grief the first and most important step?
Because when we name it, we can begin to feel it instead of judge it. What's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? I'm just, I've been sent home. I love being home. Why am I so weird about this? And we can't figure out what's wrong with us, not recognizing we're not broken. We're not crazy. We're suddenly thrust into grief. And most people think of grief as the physical loss of, someone we love, a death of a loved one. And there's many other types of grief. And this is certainly a collective grief we are all feeling.
Talk to me about the stages of grief, because I think that they explain the range of emotions and powerlessness that people feel right now.
Right. In 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the groundbreaking book on death and dying and named those stages of dying. I was privileged to adapt them with her in On Grief and Grieving. The stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. We always told everyone right on page 1, they're not a map, they're not linear. It's a very organic process. You don't have to follow them sequentially. But they do seem to fit here with what's going on. You can see people, denial, this can't be happening. I can't believe this is actually happening to us. Anger, people are getting angry and tense and frustrated. Bargaining, all right, if I just give this 2 weeks of isolation, this is going to be over, right? And then we're getting hit with this sadness. What if it's not? And then we have acceptance. That's where the power is. We've got to accept this reality to find our power.
How the hell do you accept this new normal when you didn't choose it, you don't want it, you feel powerless over it?
And that's what grief is. Grief is a change that you did not want. And none of us collectively wanted this change. That's just the tough reality we're dealing with it. If we can recognize, if we accept this, we can begin to take action. And I think that's what we're doing. You know, there's not one big moment of acceptance. If you can accept it enough to do social physical distancing, if you can accept it enough to wash our hands, those little moments of acceptance is where we find our control, where we find our power.
So I have a question. We have been asking our audience, and I'm asking you right now, if you do have a question for me or for one of the experts that we're going to start to bring on to dig deeper into these topics, just send a video to askmel@melrobbins.com. That's exactly what Kristen did. She sent us this video. We're going to roll it right now. And then David Kessler and I are going to unpack this question for her. First video. Here we go. We'll see if this works, everybody.
Hey, Mel, it's Kristen from Cincinnati. My quarantine question for you is, why am I so freaking tired all the time? I get plenty of sleep. I'm not even drinking that much. I'm eating good food. I'm taking the dogs for a walk. I have no idea why I want to fall asleep at 11 o'clock in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Please help, Mel. Thank you. Bye.
I can certainly relate to this question. Holy cow. First of all, she looks like she's exercising, which is a really good thing. But why do we want to fall asleep at 11 o'clock? And she's not even drinking that much. So she's doing all these things, yet she feels tired all the time, David.
Grief is emotionally exhausting. We don't understand how emotionally draining this is. The news, our new life. You know, we think of exhaustion as physical exhaustion, but you can literally become emotionally exhausted. And I think that's what we're all feeling.
You know, I agree with you, because one of the things that I've noticed in myself is that when the news was starting to break, and this would have been, I think, the week of, say, March 7th, where it started to feel like this slow march of bad news coming, I could feel myself getting intense and on edge and feeling anxious. It's like that fight or flight anxiety, adrenaline response started to kick in, and it sustained me for several weeks. I mean, I got prepared and I got organized and I got my routine together and I got my family back home and I got us all safe and in the house. And then all of a sudden, after 2 weeks of being like this and intense, I collapsed this weekend. Is that what you're talking about in terms of the emotional intensity of all of this?
Absolutely. It is that sense of, like you said, we're like, what do I have to deal with? I have to deal with this. I've got to get prepared. What if bad things happen? I want to be ready. We've got to be safe. And we're in that got to get to safety mode. Now that we're in the safety mode, we realize, or maybe we don't realize, that was exhausting.
I realize
exhausting.
Yes. It was exhausting. So what the hell do we do about it now that we're all just completely gassed because we've been running on adrenaline for 2 weeks and now we're trapped in our homes? We're grieving the life that we used to live and we're feeling powerless. You said we've got to accept it. What else can we do?
Well, one of the things is we can't heal what we don't feel. So, you know.
Hold on. Let me just say that again. You can't heal what you don't feel. So let's go back to Kristen. What is she trying to heal? When you get that level of exhaustion, what do you need to heal?
Can just acknowledge that is the exhaustion of grief. That is the exhaustion of fear, and feel those feelings. One byproduct of our self-help world we live in is we're the first generation that has feelings on feelings. We feel afraid and we think we shouldn't feel afraid. We are sad, but people have it worse. So we don't let ourselves feel sad, or we don't let ourselves feel angry. And we have all these half-felt emotions that we are putting out a lot of energy, suppressing them. And the reality is, if you just allowed yourself to feel them, you would feel angry and it would move through you. You would feel sad, it would move through you. Our emotions need motion.
That's true, because if you shove them down, they start to eat you alive. You know, one of the things that I've been feeling is I feel guilty grieving right now. And here's why. I'll tell you some of the things I'm grieving. I've had like 13 different events get canceled. And so there's a ton of speeches and speaking business. My talk show got canceled because we had to evacuate the CBS broadcast center. I was not able to go down and visit my parents over spring break, and I really miss them. And so I am absolutely sad about those things. And yet I don't feel like I should be grieving, because right now I have a roof over my head, I've got food in the cupboards, and I am able to pay my bills. Why do we feel guilty for feeling what we're feeling?
We minimize what we're feeling because we don't realize we're consciously or unconsciously comparing. On some level, we're going, I'm safe. Everyone's healthy in this moment. I shouldn't feel this way. And yet, everything you named is an actual loss. Those are huge losses in your life. But when we see images of people dying in Italy, when we know things that happen in this world, and we go, but I'm all right, I shouldn't feel this way. As you and I have talked, I'm a bereaved parent. In the world of comparing grief, having my younger son die, one of the worst griefs you can have. And at the same time, I deal with that. My tour also got canceled. People wanted to see me. I wanted to see them. I worked on a book for years that I didn't get to fully complete the tour. It doesn't take away, the disappointments, all the disappointments we feel in our life don't take away from the horrible physical deaths. They both get to exist in the world. And sometimes we would rather feel guilty than helpless. We'd rather feel guilty than helpless.
Well, I don't like that.
I don't either.
So we go for a more surface emotion of, just swat that disappointment away.
I shouldn't feel that way.
Feel that way because it's painful to experience a loss of any kind. And you're right. Like, we do not want to go there. We were sitting at dinner last night, and we've been doing this really powerful thing where 0 to 10, tell me how you're feeling today. And what I've noticed is my husband and 2 daughters and I have started out like pretty optimistic and feeling lucky last week. And we're now hovering in the 4 or 5s. Right. And our 15-year-old was adorable because last night he's like, I'm sorry, people, but I'm still like a 10. This is pretty amazing. I got a lot less school. Nobody's bothering me. I play my video games. Pretty happy right now. But what I've noticed is we started talking about the fact that this is extended now until the end of April. I personally think it's extended until the end of May in terms of social and physical distancing. And when I said that, one of my daughters said, don't say that. I don't want to talk about the future because I'm so scared that everything's going to get canceled. I'm scared that I'm not going back to school this fall. Can we just talk about today? And you're right. Like, everybody's emotions right underneath the surface, we're all processing so much stuff that it's easier to deny those feelings than to really go deep and feel those feelings. But why is it beneficial to you to give yourself the space to feel the loss that you feel right now?
Because then you can move through it. Then your energy is not around not feeling. Your energy can be feeling things and then taking action versus not feeling them and being in a denial and wondering what's wrong with you. you can be in what's happening. And one of the points you bring up with your daughter that's so important is we all grieve differently. And it might, it's like our personalities. I'm a planner. In good days, I'm thinking about what's happening next year, what's happening next month. So that's where my mind goes. Other people are like, please do not go beyond today. I cannot take it. So we have to recognize all our differences that we have as we're going through grief, because it brings up a lot of things with us.
Well, one of the things that I've bringed up, and I've noticed this in our community, and I've been wondering, why does the powerlessness that we feel right now during this pandemic trigger us to remember loved ones that we've lost?
Yeah, there is something about when we're coming face to face with death as this kind of entity. The reality is we have a primal mind, and that primal mind is geared to recognize if there's a lion or a tiger, we're in danger. We've got this weird virus that could be on anyone, anywhere, in the air, who knows, in a cough, and it freaks us out. And that is one of the most unnerving things that can happen to us. So then our mind goes to death. And of course, we then go to the loved ones who have died. And we begin to reprocess all losses. The other thing, same way we talk about not feeling our feelings, we often don't feel our feelings of grief. What would make you feel feelings of grief? A lot of time sitting in our home with not a lot to do.
That's
what's going to bubble up? Your old grief.
Well, you know what else this reminds me of is I remember when our daughter Sawyer was born. She's now 21. I had severe postpartum depression. And when it first happened, our family came rushing in, and I had round-the-clock supervision for almost 8 weeks. I mean, I couldn't be left alone. That's how severe the postpartum depression was. But then I stabilized, and it was safe for me emotionally and mentally to be alone and to take care of myself. And then everybody went back to their lives. And I was here in this new normal that felt very scary. And this moment feels like that. It feels like what happens after a funeral or a memorial service, where the meals that people were preparing stop coming and people go back to their lives, and you're sort of suspended in this place.
It's exactly the same archetype level of activity our brain goes through. The funeral is about the arrangements, the preparing. Doesn't that sound familiar, that we had to make arrangements and prepare? And when your loved ones are there in your depression, there's a busyness, there's a focus on them. When the busyness ends, whether it's the funeral or the preparing of what we're going through now, once we got the groceries, once we got home, we're left with just the isolation, just the sadness. And
you said that we needed to accept that we're grieving and that we've lost the things that we used to enjoy doing temporarily. You also wrote the book on the 6th stage of grief, which is meaning. So how can we use meaning as a way to accelerate the uncomfortable emotional thing? Because I'm assuming we're going to ride a wave. I'm assuming that there's going to continue to be blows. I'm assuming that there's going to be up days and down days, no matter how much we accept this. But how can I accelerate my emotional resilience to manage through this period of time?
So a few things. When we talk about meaning isn't this big thing we get to. Meaning is found in the moments. So can you find meaningful moments at home with your family? I live on a street that I have never seen my neighbors. All of a sudden, we're on a text chain. I walk down the street. I see parents playing in their front lawn with their kids. That's never happened before. If we can find these pockets of meaning, whether it's FaceTiming with a loved one, connecting with them, those little moments are going to be the meaning that's going to build. You know, one of the things that I can remember in my own life dealing with loss of jobs, every time I have had a job loss in my life, whether I left somewhere or they said goodbye to me, whether I had a month or 2 months period, I stressed and I was crazed and I was upset. And when I was back at work later, I always said, I had 2 months off, what I could have done with it. If we can remember, this is painful, it's sad, it is also an opportunity. We live in a world that we never get to connect. We're too busy to connect. This is a moment to connect, work on our projects, do a puzzle. I mean, there's a million things to do that we don't get to do. And it's so important we plant these seeds, because at the end of this, after every tragedy, people end up with post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. I want us to
hold on. I need to highlight that.
Okay.
You're going to either have post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth.
Ooh, I want us to end up on, because really meaning is post-traumatic growth. That's what meaning is. I wanted people to know, after acceptance, if you can get into the acceptance, that's when the seeds of growth and meaning begin.
Wow. I love that. I want to share two things that I've found useful. And I'd never heard the term post-traumatic growth before. So thank you for that. One is,
but it's a wonderful term, but I'm certainly trying to put it out there for people.
The one thing that has created some meaning for us as a family is these evening family dinners.
Right.
And the circling around and using the coronavirus as an excuse to check in with people's emotional well-being. And it has created some of the deepest conversations we've ever had. And the other thing that has been really cool is we've started this thing where we've asked everybody, our 3 kids and my husband and I, if you had an hour tomorrow to do something you never have time to do, what would you do? And one of our daughters revealed that she used to love to journal and write and paint, and she hasn't done it in years. And so every night now we say, okay, when is your hour going to be, and what are you going to do with it tomorrow? And she was up in her room painting yesterday. How cool is that?
It's so cool. I know someone else who is drawing and using crayons and enjoying it.
And now here's where I go and I'm human again. I immediately feel like a privileged asshole for saying that, isn't it great that my daughter's painting, when there are people that are fighting for their lives, who have just lost their jobs? How do I reconcile that inside myself? Because obviously making myself wrong doesn't save somebody in a hospital. It doesn't change the fact that somebody is struggling to pay their bills right now. What do I do with that, David?
So it's important, if we can stay whole during this, the sad reality is you're going to have opportunities to help. And if we lose ourselves and we're not taking care of ourselves, and if painting or drawing, whatever it may be, someone doing a puzzle helps us stay sane and whole, we're going to arrive to whatever is next and be able to help people in a way that if we don't keep our own sanity, it's like we've got to keep our oxygen mask on. We are going to get a chance to help others. And that's the goal, is to stay whole for that moment. If we're fine, great. Be ready to help. Your chance will come.
Well, here's what I got from this conversation. Number one, all of the powerlessness and the moments of despair and loss that I feel all day long are grief. I'm grieving losses, big and small, and I'm doing it every single day. And what I need to do is accept that I'm going to continue to grieve. And I need to hold the space to feel all the emotions and not try to fix it, just feel it so that it doesn't eat me alive. And that in being whole and feeling what I need to feel and honoring the losses that are very real for me, it doesn't take away from the very real grieving and struggles that people have. It actually makes me whole so that I can serve people better, whether that's my family or my neighbors or the community at large. And that if I find meaning, I have an opportunity for post-traumatic growth instead of experiencing the post-traumatic stress that comes with an experience this unprecedented.
Let me add a few others, because those I appreciate them. We also have to recognize and remind ourselves, this is temporary. This is temporary. We will get on the other side of this. The other thing is to notice as our mind begins to play the worst scenarios. Oh my goodness, my grandparents could die.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You also want to play the best scenarios, and they could live. Our mind wants to go into anticipatory grief and play the worst. The worst could come true, but the best could come true. And I just ask people, have a balanced mind.
So let me ask you one final question about that. So when at this moment in time, everybody feels so powerless, and I suspect that a lot of the reason why we do is because of the amount of anticipatory grief that we're feeling. Can you explain what anticipatory grief is and how it is contributing to both us feeling powerless and these moments of despair that we feel?
We all have healthy anticipatory grief. We grow up knowing someday when our parents are really old, they're going to die. That's healthy. Our mind's preparing us for loss. In this case, our mind is showing us our worst fears. And we're like buying a ticket to a bad movie. And we're sitting and watching it over and over. And I tell people, remember, you're in the movie Cineplex and you can go watch other movies. Go watch a good movie. We're going to grow after this. We're going to learn. And the last thing I want to just say is to acknowledge there are people out there who have loved ones who are dying and who have died recently, or they were struggling with grief before this. One of the things I wanted to take action is I set up a daily online Facebook group for anyone dealing with an actual death of a loved one. And people can find that at grief.com so that they don't feel in this disconnection and isolation of grief, they can still have a community.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, David Kessler. We really appreciate you taking the time from Los Angeles to be here and to name this feeling that we're all feeling. I certainly learned a lot. We will absolutely have you back. You can find David Kessler online. You can find him at grief.com. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for being here. And I want to remind you that if you have a question, I would love to answer it. You can submit your videos by taking a quick video with your cell phone and just keep it under a minute if you can. Tell me your name, ask your question. And then what we're going to do is you're going to email it to askmel@melrobbins.com. And then the other thing I want to do is, Mandy, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow. So if you could go to a full screen, that would be dynamite. So poor David doesn't have to hold the
do we want to hop
on camera pose. Thank you. So I would love to answer your questions. And if you have a question, the best way to get it to me, because Friday is going to be all Ask Mel's. The best way to ask it of me is simply pull out your smartphone, take a video. Hey, I'm Kristen. Tell me where you're from. Ask your question. And when you email it to askmel@melrobbins.com, you are giving me permission to be able to air it during this episode and put it on social media. And I will get you an incredible answer with tactical advice. And if I don't know the answer, I will search high and low for the best expert on the planet to give us the answer to your question. So please submit those, askmel@melrobbins.com. And tomorrow, we're going to move from a topic of grief to something really a bit lighter and something super important. We're going to talk about the tricks that optimists use to stay positive, and we're also kicking off something super fun. Stay Connected was launched so that you and I could stay connected and keep each other grounded and feeling positive and keeping each other reminded that there are small things that we can do despite the overwhelming nature of what we're facing right now. And one of the things that we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to launch a 30-day, I don't even know what to call it. It's not even like a challenge. It's more like something fun to do every day that we can do together. That's light, that's easy, that helps us stay connected and present every single day. We're kicking it off tomorrow because having something to look forward to is one of the secret tricks that optimists use. So I want to thank you for bearing with us during our technical challenges. We are going to jump onto Instagram real quick right after this and do a repeat of what we just talked about. So if you didn't get your question answered and you have a specific question, go over to Mel Robbins on Instagram. David and I are going to go live in just a second, and I'll be able to see your comments rolling in, and we'll be able to take a couple more questions. And in case nobody else tells you today, I want to be the one to tell you that I love you. I believe in you. Please take a deep breath and feel what you're feeling. Please take a deep breath. And as your kids go through these waves of losses and grief, and as your kids and your loved ones panic a little bit as their mind starts to wander, is there going to be graduation? Are we going back to school in the fall? What are we doing this summer? That you stand in the discomfort and you feel what you need to feel so that you can move through it. And remember, I'll be here every weekday at noon Eastern to help you stay connected and to help you find meaning and small things that you can do every day to keep you grounded in your power as we go through this unbelievable moment in time. I'll see you tomorrow. Do I need to stay here? Okay. Because we are going to be talking about the healing journey and the steps that you can take in order to heal past trauma. And when you heal past trauma, that you discover your true self. And I'm so thrilled to be introducing you to somebody that I have admired for a long time. For those of you that are just joining us, I want to welcome in everybody on YouTube. I want to welcome in everybody on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course, for you here on Instagram. Do me a favor and go right into the comments, and let's start off by telling us where are you watching from, and 0 to 10. How are you feeling today? Let's get you present in the moment. I don't even know what day it is. Oh, it's April 3rd. It is Friday, April 3rd. How are you feeling? 0 to 10. Let's get you present in this moment for this conversation. I, of course, am Mel Robbins. You're watching Stay Connected, which is my live weekday broadcast on all social media platforms, where I check in with you to help you stay grounded, stay connected, and stay, what's the right word right now? Because I woke up feeling pretty shitty today. I'm still fighting that feeling of being heavy in my bones right now. I am absolutely dealing with the moral fatigue of managing everything that's going on and how much more complex decision making is right now. We talked yesterday about how just going to the store requires you to think of about 90 different things, and how many times a day you are reminded that you have lost your life that felt normal just 2 weeks ago. And so I am on the roller coaster with you. And it's one of the reasons why I love this broadcast so much and connecting with you every day, is because I think I started the day at about a 3. And by the time I was done exercising, even though I was stiff as hell and I hated every second of it, I felt like a 5. And then starting to prepare for the conversation that you and I are going to have today with the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicole. I'm so excited for this. My energy and mood started to go up, up, up. And thinking about the conversation we're about to have and being here with you right now, I am now an 8. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to kick us off because I saw this and I realize on Instagram, it's not going to be the most amazing way to see this quote, but I saw this quote on the Holistic Psychologist's Instagram account, and it really frames what we're going to be talking about today. Who is the Holistic Psychologist? Well, she's absolutely incredible, and brace yourself because the doctor is in the house and she is about to change your life. I'm going to call her Dr. Nicole because I know that's about the only amount of information that we can all manage right now. Just a year ago, she had a couple 100,000 followers on Instagram, and then she started sharing her own insights as a holistic clinical psychologist and the founder of the Mindful Healing Center and the founder of the Future Self Journal and the creator of the Self Healer Circle, which enrollment opens. You can check out her social media channels May 1st. She started sharing her own journey of going from a holistic psychologist who herself felt stuck to learning how to reparent herself, learning how to heal her past trauma. And she has been sharing this journey on Instagram. She has almost 2 million followers. You're about to find out why she has exploded. It's because her wisdom is so universal. It's because everything that she's going to share with us today is something that you can put to use, is something you can relate to. So again, I promised you a life-changing conversation. I promised you, you better buckle up and get that pen and paper out. And this is the quote. I'm going to read it. In times of uncertainty and chaos, we will respond with how we've been conditioned to respond, through the way our own parents responded. I'm going to say that again. In times of uncertainty, because you're feeling uncertain right now. This is a collective moment of uncertainty and chaos. We will respond with how we've been conditioned to respond, through the way our own parents responded. So how many of you are finding that you're critical when you don't want to be, that you're judgmental when you don't want to be, that you're a little more argumental, that you're denying your own reality? That's when you, instead of allowing yourself to feel sad, you say, oh, well, I've got a roof over my head. You invalidate your own feelings. Believe it or not, your response to what's going on is conditioned. And today, Dr. Nicole, the holistic psychologist, is going to offer us all a different choice, a conscious choice, because today you're going to learn how to practice the inner work of observing, of reflecting, of forgiving, and of healing. So let's get to it. Let's get her on with us. Dr. Nicole, we are ready for the holistic psychologist to join us. Here she comes, everybody, live from Los Angeles. Whoa, woman.
Here I am.
Ready for you. I am ready.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I wanted to bring you on for 2 main reasons, and I'm sure we're going to talk about 10 other reasons why I wanted you to be here with us. But first of all, for those folks that follow me around the world, I wanted to give them the gift of introducing them to you and your work in the event that they had not stumbled upon your work yet. And so that's number 1. And number 2, given the moment of time that we're in life, and given how we're going through something that none of us have ever experienced, I know that it's bringing up past shit for all of us. And I know that we're doing the best that we can. But I started to wonder, is it possible, even in a moment of chaos and uncertainty like this, for us inside of this crazy ass paradigm of anxiety and fear and uncertainty, is it teeing up an opportunity for all of us to start to practice some simple things that can take us on a journey of healing? And so that's why I wanted to bring you on. And so let's start with getting you introduced and acquainted to my audience. And, you know, for those of you that have been following me for a long time, a lot of you know my story. And that is that 10 years ago, Dr. Nicole, I found myself at the age of 41 in the first recession, $800,000 in debt and drinking myself into a frenzy. And my husband and I were on the verge of losing it all. And it was very embarrassing because I had been a life coach and I had been giving other people advice. And I knew the tools that you're supposed to use in order to face uncertainty. But the problem is that knowing isn't enough. And so I started to do the work to pull my ass out of the gutter and stop drinking so much. And it began with a simple decision, one promise I made to myself, that I would get my ass out of bed when the alarm rang. And it was 10 years ago, facing a crisis in my own life and having crushing anxiety, that I invented the 5-second rule, which you count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It interrupts all the negative loops in your mind. It pulls you into conscious decision making, and it gives you a moment of consciousness where you can choose what you're going to do next. And that began my journey. And I was dumbfounded when I started following you and I saw that here you were. You are a holistic psychologist, hugely in demand. You are the founder of the Mindful Healing Center, and you start to feel stuck in your own life? What was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, stuck, Mel, I can't tell you the amount of times I heard people, clients of mine, say that word to me. I don't know if I would have identified with the feeling of it, because there was a big part of me that, similar to, I think, you, knew the things. Consciously, I knew the things that I should do. I felt like I had some version of self-awareness about myself, the issues I was having, but I couldn't activate past that. And you and I think, crossed paths. I learned of that kind of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I loved it because there's a reason why we're stuck. There's a reason why I heard that word so often. So just background on me as a human. I'm someone who's had anxiety my whole life. I don't remember a time of my life that anxiety was not in my picture. My family had anxiety. I saw it in my mom. I saw it in my sister. Decade ago, we were under the assumption that these sort of things were genetically predetermined. So right. I wore my anxiety, and I thought I was going to be wearing it my whole life, because why wouldn't I? My whole family has it. I have it. This is my story. So I, similar to a lot of us, went into management mode. How am I going to manage my anxiety? So what I did is I did a whole hell of a lot of therapy. I took medication. I found mindfulness. I started to do the things. However, I still became stuck. So everything culminated years into my practice, starting to observe these patterns. I would have incredibly insightful sessions, don't get me wrong, with my clients. We would come to all of these awarenesses, tie in all of these patterns, come up with a game plan for how we're going to break this habit next. And then next week, it would be that same conversation. Oh, well, that fight happened with my boyfriend and I yelled and screamed and now we're going to divorce, whatever, right? So same thing. At the same time, Mel, I started to really become, talk about stuck. My symptoms, my physical symptoms, my emotional symptoms really started to come to a head. So
what were they? Just so people can understand, because here's what I want everybody to take from this conversation. Dr. Nicole is going to give you the biggest aha moment of your life. And here's why. You follow me and you follow Dr. Nicole, so you're somebody who is interested in growing and changing and becoming a better person. And you learn all these tools, or you watch this live stream and then you go back in your life and you do the exact same shit over and over. And then you start to make yourself wrong and you're like, fuck, what is wrong with me? Yeah. And so what were the things that you were feeling or doing that made your life come to a head?
Yeah, absolutely. So anxiety was my undercurrent. That was my baseline feeling, meaning I was always a little bit on edge. I have, as a lot of us do, that endless stream of worry. Mine are more future-based. Some of us like to revisit our past and come up with things to worry about or shame ourselves about. I love to fear what's coming next. So that was my undercurrent, meaning I didn't know life outside of that. I had that underlying buzz of anxiety. I started to get panic attacks. So those of you who have had those know how nightmarish they can be. They feel like a heart attack. They feel like my heart is racing. I'm sweating. Maybe I actually think something is physically wrong with me. In terms of cognitively, I just felt tired, dull all of the time. Memories, I know you and I share that experience. I have very little memory of past childhood stuff, really hard to retain memories.
Can I stop right there? Because this has haunted me for a long time. So for those of you that don't know my full backstory, I suffered from anxiety until I was 41, chronically medicated for 25 years. I have about this many memories. And I realize from childhood, Dr. Nicole, I think I lived my entire life literally in a disassociated state, meaning I was either in the future or I was making myself wrong for something in the past. Is that typical when you have that kind of acute anxiety? Because I started thinking, okay, I'm going to get Alzheimer's. I'm going through menopause. Maybe there's something wrong with my brain. Is that truly something that you see if you suffered from anxiety? Very few memories?
100%. So I went down that same path. I actually had myself diagnosed with this very, very small percentage brain. And a lot of my anxiety, I should state, was very health-based. Coming from my family of chronic illness. So when I was worrying about something, it was usually me or someone I love becoming ill, more or less, on the road to dying. So I say that. So I became very convinced that there was something wrong with me for a lot of years, because in my 20s is when I started to realize that I didn't have memories. I didn't realize that I was not having my childhood, kind of in that autobiographical way that many of us, what was Christmas like as a child? I didn't come to realize it until, as a lot of us do, I started to hear other people talk about their past in a different way. So now I'm like, oh, clearly something's wrong with me. So I went down the same path. I thought it was something cognitively or physically wrong in the structure of my brain, the organ. And in my own healing journey, I've come to realize that, and it doesn't only happen, this is why I talk about our past and our conditioning. Disassociation is actually a nervous system response of protection. So when we are overwhelmed as children, typically emotionally or in our environments, if we're not getting our physical needs met, our nervous system is set up evolutionarily to keep us safe.
Right.
So what has happened for me, remember, like I was describing earlier, my baseline was stress, anxiety. My family had a family mantra, I should share because this really envelops it, is always something. And always something could be the person didn't come to cut the grass, and it could be there actually is something big happening. But every time something happened, we would go into a stress response as a family. As a child, not having someone to help me navigate my emotions, as none of us can as children. We are physically and emotionally dependent on the caregivers around us, and this is where conditioning comes into play. Because I was overwhelmed and I didn't have my parents modeling to me, I'm sure maybe some version happened to you, feelings too big, we took care of ourselves the only way that we could, which was checking out. Yes. Distancing ourselves from the feelings that were probably attached to the things that were happening that were overwhelming our childlike self. If we're not present, we're not present enough to form the memory. That's how I describe it. So the memory actually isn't there. So when I'm in my 30s and I'm like, oh, how was my childhood Christmas? Nothing was stored because I wasn't present enough during my childhood Christmases to store the memory as memories are stored in our brain through our senses, through our emotions. There's a part of our brain that houses that. Right. And when we're not present, and there is also research that demonstrates that area of our brain, it's called the hippocampus, is actually, I'm going to use the word damage. It's not damage. It's structurally a little bit different. So before you know it, you have someone like yourself and myself who has no memories. I'm happy I've been sharing about it, because not only has it normalized my experience, I don't have to feel so like something's wrong with me. I think it helps a lot of people, because I think a lot of us are having very few memories.
I agree. How many of you are relating to what Dr. Nicole and I are sharing? Because I started to go down the road of, holy shit, what happened to me?
Yeah.
Something horrendous, and maybe something happened, maybe something before I was, I don't know. But I know that I lived in such a heightened sense. And I also became a master, Dr. Nicole, of presenting the most confident, cheerful, I got it together. Nobody that ever knew me, except for like my two best friends, had a fucking clue that this is what was going on.
Yeah. Same. I also became a master, as I'm sure you did, at presenting as if I was present. I am so attuned and aware and kind of the other person. So it's not that I lack other awareness, I lack my own awareness. So I'm almost hyper vigilant I mean, I'm in the field of people. I talk to people all day long. I'm really good at talking to people, right? So that's, I think, a compensation. You wouldn't know. I call it my spaceship now. I'm on my spaceship. Anyone talking to me would have no idea that I wasn't there.
Wow. So I want to give everybody the aha moment that I find to be so profound and so helpful that I have read in your work. And that is when you have shared that the reason why you can go to therapy or you can watch Dr. Nicole and I on this live stream and go like, bing, oh, cool, I can try that. I can do this. I can do that. The reason why it's so hard to implement behavior change has to do with the part of the brain that you're using when you are watching a video like this or reading a book that's a self-help book or listening to a podcast, or you're in a therapy session where you're calm and you're present and you're intellectual, versus what's going to happen when you walk into the kitchen and you see that everybody in your family has made lunch and not made nothing for you and left a mess for you to clean up, and you lose your fucking mind, even though you promised you were going to practice self-healing.
Yeah.
Can you explain to everybody the two different modes of the brain, the one you use to learn shit and the one you're actually dealing with when it comes to changing conditioning and trauma patterns and all the shit that we all have, regardless of what we've experienced in life?
Yeah. So the reason why we're stuck is housed in a part of our brain called the subconscious. I talk about it so often now because this might sound really surprising to a lot of listeners, but in my 7-8 year program that I was in, and in the additional training that I did in psychology, I knew that the subconscious existed, but never once was this really explored and talked about and understood as going to be something that in the clinical room we're working with. It's really largely kept out of the room, and the part of the mind that's talked about more frequently in talk therapy is the conscious part of the mind. So to simplify, this is a really simplified version. Those are the two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. So the issue becomes the most commonly heard example of the subconscious. We're very grateful that we have our subconscious. That's the example that we hear when, right, I'm driving my car home. I mean, maybe not so many of us are driving now, but I'm driving my car home, right? I'm thinking about like, you know, what I have to do when I get home, maybe. And thankfully I'm alive at home, putting my key in the door, and I don't remember shit about my ride home. How did I get home? Quite literally, your subconscious drove you home. So we love our subconscious, because if we had to consciously attend to everything and remember how to do everything that goes along with being human each and every day, we would be completely debilitated.
By the way, let me just say something for everybody. The reason why your bones feel heavy and you feel like you have taken the SAT 4 times every day and you want to go to sleep at 5 o'clock right now in the middle of this quarantine and this global crisis is because you can't rely on your subconscious to go to the store. You got to be hyper vigilant. Yes. So you're using the part of the mind that you're normally not using all day, which is why you're fucking exhausted.
Yeah. And that's very, I love that you pointed that out, because calorically it benefits we have to remind ourselves that our brain is an actual organ. It lives in a physiological body. Hormones affect it, you know, our imbalance is affected. So it is an entity, and it takes it needs calories to run. And that's the reality of it too. Our brain prefers to run on subconscious autopilot, we like to call it, because it takes less calories. So the issue becomes, though, our subconscious, when we're born, remember, we're born physically and emotionally and spiritually, if you will, dependent on these caregivers. We quite literally cannot care for ourselves. That's the way humans are born. When we're born, our brains are actually shifting their brainwave patterns. So to really simplify it, for the first several years of our life, our brains are in a sponge mode. They're in theta wave state, it's called, which essentially just means that we're taking the world in. This might sound silly, but this is what we're doing. And we're learning how to human, right? We're learning how to be about the world, what these bodies do, how to take care of them. We have feelings. That's really complicated for humans. We're learning about our emotional, our energetic world. If you're a believer that we have a spiritual or soul-based entity, as I do, right, we're learning about all this. So we're taking it in. We're wide-eyed. That's why babies look wide-eyed. And we're coming up with, I call them programs, because I think the computer analogy is the best analogy, right? Beliefs, the programs are everything. Mel, from our habits, we are very habitual as humans, right? The things we do, A lot of times we do the same things we were modeled or taught to do by those around us. This involves self-care. How do we care for our physical bodies? We're very habitual in our beliefs about ourselves, about others, about the world. We're habitual in the feelings. We tend to gravitate around certain feeling states. Mine was stress. Mine was anxiety, right? We then even become habitual with how we cope with our feelings. We tend to do the same things. I kick and scream, you and I, we dissociate, we check out. So all of these habits, I call it our habit self, is stored in our subconscious. So why am I telling you this? All of this is formed at a time where we had no conscious control. The conscious part of our brain wasn't formed. That develops after, right? So we have all of these programs from all of this early time that are running, 95% of the day are running our habit life. We become an adult. I find a great life coach. I find some great therapists. I'm talking in these sessions from my conscious mind, from the mind that can analyze and view. I'm typically, maybe some sessions I'm emotionally activated, a lot I'm not. I'm maybe calm, I'm in baseline, right? Everything looks clearer. Those were those great conversations. Flash forward to during the week. During the week, I'm likely back in habit self. I'm emotionally reactive. Maybe my nervous system is dysregulated. That's a lot of what's happening now. We have a collective that's living a very real traumatic experience. So a lot of our nervous systems are becoming dysregulated. And in those moments, our conscious mind, literally, think about it like this, goes offline.
Right.
And we live those same reactions. And then we feel shameful that we kicked and screamed and yelled or dissociated again 3 days later because we know better. And now we have this spiral of stuff that happens.
You just explained decades of my life where I would say, and how many of you can relate to this? You know this thing you want to change about yourself. You do all this work to figure out what to do. And then you get into that exact same situation that you hoped and prayed and are just so committed to changing. And then you do the exact same damn thing. And so the piece that's really important that I want to unpack to make sure you get it and that it lands, because I think it will help with this shame spiral. Like, why can't I stop cheating? Why can't I put down the drink? Why do I keep screaming at my kids? Why do I keep letting the panic attacks come and I can't get the deep breathing thing? It's because when you talk to Dr. Nicole, and a lot of you are asking, who the hell, how do I find her? The Holistic Psychologist is her Instagram handle. Just get there and follow her. If you are thinking or talking about what you need to do, what part of the brain are you using, Dr. Nicole?
The conscious part of the brain.
The conscious part of your brain. But then you go out into your life and you are subject literally to all of the conditioning. I call them patterns. You can call them programming. They're all hardwired in your nervous system. So before your conscious brain can even get control of your ass, your nervous system and the subconscious part of your brain is like, I recognize this situation. This is where I'm trained to scream. And you suddenly find yourself screaming at everybody when you had promised yourself today you would try to hold it together. And then, of course, you beat yourself up. And this is why you're stuck. It's because we're trying to change with the conscious part, but it's our nervous system that's in control. Am I getting this right?
100%. And even more to piggyback on this and really hammer this home, our nervous system actually does operate below awareness. It is scanning our environment to keep the organism that is us safe, to house, the organism that is us, to keep this physical body alive, outside of our awareness. So that removes us even further from control. Meaning, if that's what happens, if I'm walking down a street and it's dark, right, my nervous system might be starting to activate myself. If I get that hair on the top of my back of my neck standing up, right? So what did that? I might not consciously be even noting anything's amiss, but my nervous system is online and is sensing whether it's energetically a shift or whatever it is. So I really want to hammer that home, because especially with those of us, and I believe most of us share a version of trauma.
Yep.
I'm a believer in beyond the big T that most of us kind of have historically designated as the traumatic experiences. I believe most humans have suffered a traumatic experience. So when that's the case, this is why I highlight this, our nervous system is going to call the shots. It's going to, especially with the climate now, throw us into that fear-based, likely is what's happening for a lot of listeners, reaction. And we actually do lack control, because that's hovering so beneath the surface that it's going to call our shots before our conscious mind can even have a chance.
So Dr. Nicole, let me take a pause real quick and just welcome in everybody that is continuing to join this live stream. So whether you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or here on Instagram, I want to welcome you. I'm Mel Robbins and you're watching Stay Connected. And I've got Dr. Nicole. You can find her, the Holistic Psychologist, online. And I wanted her here because I wanted to have a deeper conversation about this moment in time of collective uncertainty and how you can use the tools that Dr. Nicole is going to explain to us in just a moment to start a healing journey and to start the process of what she calls reparenting and reprogramming your own mind and nervous system so that you can not only locate your real self, but you can have more control and start to heal. Before we get to that, though, I don't want to step over something that is critical to understanding the programming that you, yes, you, we are talking to you, experienced. And this is not about making your parents wrong. Most parents did the best that they could with the programming that they had and with the stressors they were facing. And so let's talk first about what are the 3 fundamental needs that every child has, and what happens to you as a child if these 3 fundamental needs are not met.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where I introduce this more expanded definition, because I believe that not having the fundamental needs of being seen, being heard, and given the space, I think is the best way to word it, to be authentically expressed, to be acknowledged as a different, authentic being than everyone else around you, because that's what we all are. We are all different and unique. Those are our needs: to be seen, to be heard, and to be authentically expressed. And
can
when
you
they're not
unpack those just a little bit more? So what does it mean to be seen? What does it mean to be heard? And what does it mean to be given the space as a child to be authentically expressed? Let's unpack each one of those and then talk about how if you don't get one of those met by your caregiver, how it creates trauma in your nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we are, as I see it, we have physical bodies, we have emotional bodies, and we have spiritual bodies. And we come into this world, in a uniqueness. We are born, however, most of us into some family system. Some of us, maybe it's with one caregiver, with other of us have bigger, larger extended families. We're clearly born into societies and relationships. Humans are an interpersonal species, meaning we have relationships with others. It's how we become successful as a species. So when we come, right, remembering that we are being modeled how to be in the world of being human, one of the things that we're also being modeled is ourselves, right? We don't know anything about this body that we're in. I don't know how to make sense of what this experience of life is, right? So we need help, and we look to our caregivers for that help. And to speak to your point, this isn't about right or wrong or good or bad in terms of parenting. This is how intergenerational patterns are transmitted, because we cannot teach or we cannot model, and that's how children learn. We learn by modeling. That old adage, do what I say, not as I do. Actually, right? It's quite opposite. Children are actually going to be watching what you do, even if you say in contradiction to that, right? So all of this is happening. We're navigating life. We're learning about ourselves. And when we are not, so if we don't have a parent who got modeled self-care behaviors, or who came to understand who they are emotionally, energetically, and spiritually, because they were not given the tools to do that, chances are they're not going to be able to provide you with that. Right. Oftentimes what happens too, very well-intentioned, sometimes a caregiver will have had a painful childhood experience, and to overcompensate will decide, I will never have my child experience this, and will actually, best intentioned, engage in some overcompensatory modeling of conditioned behaviors that also aren't helpful. So short of it is, right, if you don't have a parent who's not only teaching you how to care for your unique physical body, which means you have different needs, nutritional needs, you like different things, your body does well with different levels of sleep than other people, right? If you don't have a parent that's helping you to be seen in that way, to explore, right, your physical needs, you're probably not going to know how to connect with your body and listen to your body's needs. Similar with emotions, right? We don't understand emotions. They're big, they're overwhelming, like I was saying earlier. If you don't have a parent, right, that can sit down and help you explore your emotions when you're having them, from the sensations that the child is having in their body to then giving that a name, right? That's how we communicate with emotions. I feel mad. Then exploring with the child how they feel better when they feel mad. Because this is, again, where we're unique, the authentic piece. To be seen in her as a unique, now energetic being. What makes you feel better now when you're sad might be the farthest thing that makes me feel better, might me feel worse when I'm sad, right? So these are the ways that parents can help shape, ideally, a child to be seen, heard, and authentic, so that they then, over time, developmentally, as we develop the skills to do so, now we can engage in those habits and we can understand how to care. And I'm going to be the first one to admit this, because I spent no time in my physical body, I had no idea how to run this. I didn't know when I was hungry. I didn't know when I was full. I didn't know what made me feel good. I thought things made me feel good that didn't end up making me feel good.
Right.
It turns out, let alone my emotional world. I mean, forget it. I'm still learning my emotional landscape that each and every day. I'm learning how to put words to feelings. I'm learning how to communicate. I'm learning how to regulate, especially when I'm really having a big feeling. And then the whole spiritual world, that was completely absent. No one ever taught me or showed me about that aspect of my being. So now it's about cultivating. And that's what reparenting is. It's going back in those areas and acknowledging the ways or the conditioned patterns that I might be living that don't serve me, often passed on, and then changing, creating change, making a choice. I use the term small daily promise because change is hard, picking a small way to integrate a new habit. That's what reparenting is showing up for ourselves now as the wise parent that knows and learning how to know ourselves at that level.
So basically, every human being, once they leave their parents' house, regardless of how amazing or not the parents are, everybody needs to go through some form of reparenting, because for better or for worse, you were conditioned by your parents to believe certain things, to have certain behavior patterns, and to have certain beliefs about yourself. And if you weren't seen, if you weren't heard, if you weren't given the space to be truly yourself, and even worse, if those things were denied to you out of abuse or abandonment, that is trauma, correct?
Absolutely. And even more so, oftentimes our denial, I talk about denial of reality, isn't even in instances of abuse or neglect or abandonment. For instance, for me, there was such a culture just of general denial in my family, where we all had these agreed upon narratives of the family, and any narrative outside of there was just not spoken about. There was no room for it. So that's even a version of denial. So if I show up and I have a different experience of this event, and I go to talk about it in my family, if I'm a child or whoever, right? Sometimes you'll hear, oh, that's not what happened. Or this is actually, right? That's another version of this denial of reality. The more that happens, the more I doubt myself and my reality, because my intuition is pinging, and a lot of children, they'll present this, daddy's upset. No, he's not. Well, the child is having an energetic experience of daddy, and daddy might be upset to that child. And when that's denied, the more it happens, now you could have an adult that's like myself, that when they register, something happening, their voice now overrides it. Oh, that's not what's happening.
Well, Dr. Nicole, and for those of you, again, who are just joining us, I'm Mel Robbins. This is Dr. Nicole. You can find her at the Holistic Psychologist online. And we're talking about basically going on a healing journey. And we're talking about how past programming as you're raised gets stored in your nervous system. And that starts to dictate how you respond to just about anything with your unconscious mind, and how all of us, in order to reclaim ourselves, in order to stop betraying ourselves, in order to live a life that is aligned with our truth and our values and our hopes and dreams, there is a major amount of work you got to do with the patterns of behavior and beliefs that you have that are somebody else's. And what I realize as I'm listening to you, and you were talking about how there is the way that the family narrative goes, anything outside of that, what emotionally it felt like for me speaking up is that I'm betraying somebody, that I am, by having a different experience, it is such a betrayal at a core level that you wouldn't possibly speak it. And I think it's why I would disassociate so much. So now that we know that all of us have these nervous system responses, and can you just quickly say, what are the top kind of ways that people respond to uncertainty? You and I are in the anxiety camp. We disassociate. You get on your spaceship. I become I got it all together, but on the inside, I'm like, fuck, I'm having an anxiety attack, but I'm not going to let you see that. I'm just going to try to make everything perfect. What are some of the core responses to uncertainty? Because now I want to shift the conversation into, let's talk about this moment in time, collective uncertainty. There is no one on the planet that has gone through this exact moment. And I'm sure everybody on some level is in a fight or flight, adrenaline fueled, hypervigilant state. What are the possible patterns that people might be experiencing from their subconscious in reaction to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So to extend in terms of those of us who fall into the anxious camp, worry, a lot of worry-based thinking, worst case scenario, future-based, predicting what's going to happen. So a lot of us, our minds start to run. That could also look different, the narratives, but a lot of times what we'll see in times of uncertainty, because we're uncomfortable and because we're having that fear response, that's what uncertainty triggers, just to make that clear, a threat response. That's what we mean when we say our nervous system is activated. It quite literally feels that there's a threat that it needs to take care of in the present moment. And obviously with the climate, that threat for a lot of us is very real and feels very big. So now our nervous system is kicked on. So we tend to then spend a lot of us can then spend a lot of time in our minds. So whether we're worrying or just kind of thinking, a lot of time thinking, playing things, worst case scenarios, whatever it will be. A lot of us might just feel a sense of agitation. I'm on edge. I always feel like I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. I might be even jumpy. Right? Noises, I might just feel like I'm at that 9 or 10, on the edge, waiting for the next straw. That's happening a lot. That might look like in terms of emotional reactivity too. You might find yourself a little more irritable in your relationships. A lot of times, some of us go down the what's known more typically as, I don't like diagnosis is depression, right? Low. I might start to feel really sad. I might feel really tearful. That too is a nervous system response. So we have the fight or flight one. And then we have the alternate nervous system, which is called the parasympathetic. So our sympathetic nervous system activates us. That's what I was describing when I'm on edge. I'm hyperreactive. I might be having a panic attack even. My mind's spinning. The opposing nervous system is called the parasympathetic. And a lot of time that mimics the depressive symptoms. So some of you might be not getting out of bed, having absolutely the heaviness you were talking about. No energy. I can't do anything. So I think those are really common ones that are starting. And then you have, how do you cope when you're stressed? That is patterning that probably a lot of us are living. So maybe some of you are drinking or self-medicating or whatever it is that you do when you're stressed or you're coping with a negative emotion. Again, these are the learned ways that aren't always the healthiest for us as adults. You might be seeing yourself engage in those, especially with time. So you might see yourself wanting to check out a bit more or do the old things that don't serve you anymore. So those are going to be markers that you're activated and you're living in more of that habit self.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and you go, holy cow, I'm really activated. Check, 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 check on the things that you're describing. What are some simple steps that you can take right now to start a very small healing journey to try to reclaim your conscious mind in a moment when the world is triggering all this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you 2 tools, but that we can marry them and use them together. So one is going to really help us to restabilize that balance at our nervous system level. Anyone who follows me knows I'm always talking about the power of our breath, of a breathwork practice. Because for me, living in that dysregulated, constant, always something, fight or flight nervous system, I carried that with me. Even though I wasn't connected to my family, right? And I wasn't maybe getting the updates about always something, what I was living is that in my relationship. I made little things always something in my relationship because I still was carrying that nervous system patterning. So that's our conversation today. So those of us who are dysregulated in our nervous system can gain such impact with breath work. What that could look like, So back to what you and I were agreeing on earlier, change is hard, right? You can't overwhelm. You're not going to do 17 new things tomorrow, right? Pick one new small daily promise. The promise could be 5 deep belly breaths. That's what the breath we're looking for. There's a ton of different breathwork practices out there. Anyone listening can YouTube and maybe get a guided version of this. I suggest just retraining ourselves how to breathe deeply from our belly, because we don't need to be in front of a computer. You can do it while you're doing the dishes. The belly is the important part of it, because that shifts us into that nervous system, that state of calm. So what that can look like is 5 deep belly breaths. It might feel weird for me. It felt very weird for me to breathe into my belly. I was so used to being a shallow chest-based breather for so long. My posture actually mimics my always something stress. I actually look like I'm carrying the weight.
Okay, I'm gonna sit back now.
So I say this, Mel, because I actually had to start to practice my deep belly breathing laying down.
So can you just walk us through this? Because I know when people are overwhelmed, and for everybody that keeps asking, absolutely. We save all of these. They're on a playlist. We are going to also cut these up into shorter videos. We're going to give them to Dr. Nicole too, so she can make sure to share them. So we will make sure you can watch this forever on YouTube and Facebook. It disappears on Instagram, but literally, yes, you can come back to this. But will you walk us through this? Because I know even just leaving a broadcast like this, some of us are so disassociated or triggered right now that just the executive functioning associated with holding, I got to find breath work. Now I got to search for it. Now I got to think about it. Now I got to do it. Will you just walk us through this real quick?
100%. Absolutely. So just as a quick experiment, anyone listening, if you want to put your one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and just observe. We're going to talk about observing in a minute too, but just observe where you feel. It might be really faint, but where you feel your breath happening, if you will. The breath is one of those gifted things that we breathe. We don't necessarily have to consciously think about it. That's one of those programs, right? Our body is breathing for us. So the question is it coming from our chest or from our belly? Chances are it's coming from our chest.
Yeah.
Really faintly, right? Most of us, when we're born, if you ever observe an infant, you can see their bellies are breathing. We're actually born as a belly breather, but over time, most of us humans have evolved out of that into that more. Maybe that's really symbolic of the more stressful lives that we're living as we age, but that's the conversation. Either way, we come up. So it's about really getting that breath down. So leaving that hand on the belly, you can breathe in your nose, in your mouth, out your nose, out your mouth, whatever is the most comfortable. We just want to make sure that when we're breathing in, we're inflating our belly out. I'll do it in 1 second, right? We can just hold it for a second and then elongate just slightly longer than that in breath. So it looks like sometimes you can count. I know some people like to do in with 4, out with 7. There's different things you can do, but 2 things are important. That's all we're worried about now. Okay. Breathing so I can feel my belly inflate. It might be weird. It's going to take practice. And then a nice long out breath. That's going to be what helps us shift into that calm place, into that more balanced nervous system. So if we're having that activation, this tool will go a very, very long way. So make a promise to yourself to find somewhere in your day where you pop that hand and you just give yourself 5 of those deep, tune into how you feel, of those deep calming breaths.
Gotcha. Fabulous. And you know what I noticed is when I put my hand on my stomach, I don't know how many of you noticed this, when I took that first deep breath, I actually sucked my stomach in. I didn't feel it up. So I got a lot. Yeah. I'm going to make a tiny promise. This is step number 1. Tiny promise to do 5 belly breaths a day.
Yes.
And let's talk about the second thing you can do right now to start a healing journey to reparent yourself and your nervous system right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was saying earlier about observing, we all need to create a habit of getting out of that autopilot, of living life from that conscious part of our mind. That's what's going to give you the choice in those moments of reactivity. Because the reality of it is, our triggers don't go away. We're going to find ourselves in challenging situations. The world's happening around us. Stress is here, right? We need to learn how to separate ourselves from this conditioning and show up consciously, giving ourselves the gift of choice of a new behavior in that moment, not of those old habits, not of those old coping skills. So to do that, we need to be showing up consciously.
How do you show up consciously?
So we begin to practice. So again, this could mean that I'm always talking about a practice of meditation, because creating a habit of consciousness is difficult. I'm going to say this right off the bat. We are so trained to live in autopilot. Many of us are so dissociated. We haven't practiced living consciously for our lives thus far. So this is going to take some time. So I suggest a meditation practice, because when my eyes are closed, when maybe I'm sitting quietly, right, I have all of my focus on my internal world. Because what we want to do is create space between the endless narratives, the endless subconscious programming that's existing all day long, and that consciousness. So because meditation is so difficult, I suggest people, either if you want to have a sitting practice, start with 1 minute. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. There's another way we can do it during our day, which is a commitment to practice one conscious moment in our day. So what that could look like, and I've actually suggested in my membership, I was looking for my phone, but I'm on it. I've actually suggested members to set up an alert in their phone. And when their phone goes off, right, it buzzes, check in with where your attention is. And chances are your attention is going to be not probably on what you're doing. Right. So this is another way to create consciousness. If you like the idea of sitting and meditating, that is amazing. Start small. If not, when that buzzer goes off and I come to realize, oh, I was worrying about tomorrow in my head, bringing your attention back to what are you doing? You can use that breath now. So if you're practicing both, focus your attention on your breath. Give yourself a belly breath in that moment. Bring your attention into your body. Now you've become conscious. You might lose consciousness and go right back into autopilot, but that's one moment where you're gaining that attentional control and that choice, because that's how we become conscious. We come into our bodies and into our present moment.
I want to offer up something that's a tool that I realized that my husband's using. So my husband went on this Buddhist meditation retreat for his 50th birthday, and he came back, and throughout our day, I'd say maybe 5 times a day, there's this beautiful thing that goes off on his phone. And the first time I was like, what the fuck? And he said, these are the same chimes that ring in the monastery. And it's a quiet reminder to bring yourself into the present moment. Now, I also want to underscore something for why this is so important to start right now, because I see in the comments very serious issues that people are dealing with. I just lost my job. I'm terrified about paying my bills. I am struggling with my drinking. I'm trapped in a self-isolation with a narcissist, and I'm starting to slowly go crazy. These are very serious issues that you're dealing with. And the reason why it's important to do something like the 5 belly breaths that Dr. Nicole just recommended, or more importantly, practicing bringing yourself into consciousness, is because the whole start of this healing journey, as you said, is to create space between the shit that triggers you and makes your mind go south and your ability to become conscious in that moment and make a conscious decision, because that patterning from the past betrays you and it robs you of your strength. And if you can make a conscious decision to stand in this moment and be present, you've got a shot at choosing something different that will help you look for a job or help you manage the stressors that you are in. Am I summarizing this correctly for why this work is important? Because I find sometimes people hear meditate or belly breathe and like, how the fuck is that going to help me get a job? Right. And so I don't want you to dismiss the power of what she's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the impact of living in autopilot and shifting into conscious is pervasive. It's beyond, I can just calm myself. I mean, our relationship to our external world is really filtered through all these programmings that you and I have been talking about, through our subconscious, through our habit behaviors, through our beliefs about ourselves, others, our relationships to the world. We are quite literally filtering what's happening through those, right? Those kind of programs, patterns And then that's what's actually dictating what's happening inside us, energetically, physiologically, the emotions, to use our terms, right? The feelings we're having. And then again, back comes those habit behaviors and how we deal with those feelings. So this is not just like, oh, I can calm myself. This is how I navigate life, because I'm coloring life with all of these conditioned beliefs all day long, whether I'm aware that I'm doing it or not. We all are.
So there's two tools I want to highlight. Obviously, you can follow me, Mel Robbins. Certainly get your butt over to the Holistic Psychologist and follow Dr. Nicole. She also has a free future self journal that you can get if you go to Instagram and you look just in the link in it and hop on her email list. And she also has enrollment for her self-healer circle opening up May 1st. But more importantly, she's got so much amazing free content that isn't just a quote. It's rich in its research and in its tools and in its help. So I would strongly recommend, particularly in this moment, that you add her to the people that you follow. Given the moment of time that we're in, is there anything else that you want to say to the person that's watching at home about how to best support themselves as we move through this moment of uncertainty and crisis together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reconnecting. I think this offers us in our conversation today, what this offers us all is an opportunity to begin to make new promises to reconnect with ourselves, right? And I think what I want to urge everyone, I mean, so just bringing this all full circle, right? Here I was, someone who was debilitated with anxiety, health-based nonetheless, always something, living. I mean, this for me might as well be my worst nightmare, what's happening in just the global crisis, right? I have elderly parents. I mean, talk about health concerns, right? Health, anxiety, talk about always something. There actually is always something, right? So I could really be at the epicenter of dealing and coping in that old way. And I share this with you because there's so much change and empowerment when we meet ourselves. So for anyone listening and who anyone is feeling shameful or who just isn't feeling fulfilled or just doesn't have the life that they think that they want, maybe they don't even know if they deserve it, it's not, the reason that we're stuck is not who you are. We've come to own all of these conditioned patterns for too long. And the tools to change really happen when we reconnect with ourselves, the self that was always there. So anyone who's feeling lost, you said something really beautiful earlier, Mel. Our goal, once we decide, once a lot of us are like, oh, I want to reconnect with my authentic self. That's our end goal. That is the goal here. There's such empowerment in doing that, right? And in becoming conscious and in seeing these ways that these patterns aren't you is a first step. So anyone who's feeling less than, know that that's not yours and you don't have to own that anymore. And take these small steps to begin the journey back home to yourself.
Oh my God.
It changed my life. It changed my life. And that's why I share, because I've embodied so many of those stuck patterns, so many of that, the world is happening to me and I have no control over it and I'm scared all the time, to truly just believe differently now. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I've lived the change. And this for now would be really scary for me. And reconnecting with myself through belly breathing, through consciousness, allows me to find just a moment of peace in my day, even with the world happening as it is.
Beautiful. Oh my God. I fucking love you. Right. Seriously. I wish you were my next door neighbor so we could break quarantine after we had been isolated.
I would say I do, but no way in hell am I headed back to New York in this weather that I'm here.
Well, I'm in Boston, but oh my God, it's been raining for 5 days. So I got to belly breathe everybody and listen to my husband's chimes. So thank you so much for your wisdom. I am so thrilled to call you a friend and a colleague, and I am forever a fan and a supporter of your work, and we will have you back, and let's do something awesome in terms of something. Yeah, we should clearly do something, don't you all think? And please go follow her, the Holistic Psychologist. Thank you so much for being with us. And for those of you who keep asking, yes, we are going to save this. And yes, this will be up forever. And yes, we will get this to Dr. Nicole. And yes, we will see you on Monday, and we'll see you on social media. And please, 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 if nobody else tells you, let Dr. Nicole and I tell you, we love you and we believe in your ability to start the reparenting process and truly find your true self. It's going to be an amazing healing journey, and we'll be there to support you every step of the way. All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mel.